Welcome back. How is this, your day going so far? You know, my biggest fear is after lunch, people get sleepy. Are we feeling awake and alive? Okay. Now, one of the biggest things that I love is, doesn't it feel good to have lunch and not have to worry about dishes? Oh man, thank you, Lord. It is the little things. Now, would you agree with me that this is definitely a memorable day? It's so special to be together in person and to those of our sisters who are seeing us virtually to join us. Now, those of you that are here, don't you wish you had a memento to remember this special day by? Like a t-shirt? So guess what? You can get a t-shirt and there's only a few left. Visit the Pio Prints booth behind the wall and get your shirt to remember this special day forever. One more announcement. Michelle Strauchter. If Michelle Strauchter, please, can you report to the registration table? We have a lost item for you there. So Michelle Streiter, please report to the registration table. All right, my dear sisters, are we ready for this next half of our conference? So I want to begin by saying a huge thank you to our musician, Tori Harris, and her group of phenomenal musicians. This morning, this praise and worship, it was just filled with God's fire. Right in theme with our seminar, our conference, to rekindle God's flame in us. So thank you so much, Tori Harris. And later today, she will be sharing her music during Holy Hour. Thank you again to all the amazing volunteers. You all are amazing and fabulous. And we're also very grateful to our vendors and team members for making this such a wonderful afternoon. As you could imagine, it's quite an undertaking to put together the Columbus Catholic Women's Conference. As we think about our yes, where God has called us and where God is in all of our lives, it is important to acknowledge those beautiful, hearty souls that have given their yes to this conference in so many cases for the last 14 years. So next year, be attentive because Columbus Catholic Women's Conference is celebrating its quinceañera. I'd like to first thank the Columbus Catholic Women's Conference, the board of directors and leadership team for their tireless work and faithfulness to working in the vineyard to make this day special and possible. Father Brett Garland, our Columbus Catholic Women's Conference chaplain, thank you so much. And thank you, Monsignor Malloyne, for beautiful Mass this morning, conference support, and for his leadership in Columbus Diocese. Sharon Select and the choir, wow, weren't they amazing? Such talent. This choir made up of high school and college-age students. For the beauty and the sacrament during this morning, that was just so special. Thank you to the priests who celebrated Mass, to the deacons who served this morning, and of course to the priests who are here for the reconciliation this afternoon, and our seminarians who will serve in the Holy Hour. Thank you, gentlemen. Thank you, brothers in Christ, for being a powerful witness and bearers of the word. We also want to thank the sisters and nuns who have joined us today. Thank you for your witness and for ministering to our world in action and prayer. And thank you, all of you, who today is your day, for participating in the 2022 Columbus Catholic Women's Conference. Without you, this event would not happen. And then, of course, we cannot forget the host parish, St. Paul in Westerville. Thank you for your hard work, for volunteering, and for being here. So, my dear sisters, as many things this year have had to change due to the pandemic, our conference is also often one of them. Unfortunately, Janelle Foligno is unable to join us in person this year. Like many of our guests today, Janelle joins us virtually. Janelle Foligno wears many hats. A born and bred northerner from Salisbury, Ontario, Canada, Janelle is a mom to 3 young children, wife to Nick Foligno, former captain of the NHL team Columbus Blue Jackets. That's right, go Jackets. He's now with the Boston Bruins. But regardless, she is an avid philanthropist, lifelong Catholic, and the author of the children's book, Dear Heart. When Janelle and Nick's first child, Milana, was born with a congenital heart defect and her heart failure in 2013, their battle with heart disease began. After 2 open heart surgeries, multiple minor surgeries, and frequent visits to see the doctors and specialists, Milana is a healthy and aspiring young girl. Through these experiences, Janelle, alongside Nick's husband, Nick, have started the Heart's Playbook Foundation to raise funds and awareness for heart health research and congenital heart defect awareness, as well as hospital heart centers and families. Janelle describes her faith as being a journey, one that she is proud and that she shares with her children. The Foligno family has ingrained themselves in every community they've been part of, both in philanthropy and Catholic faith. So virtually, can we be loud and have Janelle hear us? Let's welcome Janelle.
Hi everyone, my name is Janelle Foligno and I am honored to have been asked to speak for you all today. I'm disappointed that due to the ongoing pandemic, I am unable to be there in person, but will try to make the most of this video recording. Believe it or not, I'm actually more nervous in front of the camera than I would be in person. So here's hoping I can properly translate my experiences to you all. While I certainly don't have the credentials some of the other speakers today have, I come to you as a busy mom of 3 children, a wife to a professional hockey player, formerly for the Columbus Blue Jackets and currently for the Boston Bruins. I'm an avid philanthropist and someone whose faith has been tried time and time again, but it remains at the forefront of my life, and I'm here to tell you how. When I was preparing my talk and thinking about what to say and how to say it, 2 quotes kept coming to mind. You have undoubtedly heard them before, but I'd like to dissect them a little bit with you today. These sayings are, 1, God never gives us more than we can handle, and 2, everything happens for a reason. Let me first give you a little background on myself. I grew up in Canada as part of a very small family. I was baptized and raised Catholic, went to Catholic schools my whole life, but truthfully, I never fully connected with my religion until I met my husband Nick when I was in university. Growing up, I went to church and I sang in choir and I did all the things, but you could say that I was really just going through the motions. My parents never dove into it with me, so I did feel this certain disconnect. Looking back, I'm grateful for this experience, or I guess lack thereof, but when I found my faith again, I really found it. In high school, I went through a period of trying to find myself and my purpose, which I think a lot of us go through at some point in our lives. During these years, I battled a pretty severe eating disorder and I struggled at finding my place. I often felt lost and alone despite being surrounded by friends and family. Now that I'm through it and can look back on that part of my life, I really think that controlling my food was my way of trying to feel in control of my life, which felt so out of touch. I think as a woman, we often try to make ourselves small in comparison to others. We feel like it's not okay to be our authentic self, and we try to minimize our strengths so as to not make others feel uncomfortable. Luckily, I think society has come a long way in encouraging women to be the best versions of themselves, and I realize that not only is it good for them, but for everyone around them too. For me, my version of making myself small was very literal and trying to physically take up less space. Thankfully, through a lot of the work on my mental health, which by the way is continuous and ongoing, I was able to break free from the mold I was trying to fit myself into. When I think of my husband's upbringing, I realize it was very different than mine. God, their faith, individually and as a family, were a priority in their home. When we first started dating and I was coming around his family, I noticed that they prayed before every meal, they spoke about what was being taught in church, and they openly brought God into their home. This was new to me, but I was drawn to it. So when I say I found my faith again, I think that was the point. Nick and I would have long conversations, and though it was difficult for me to knock down the walls I had put up, slowly but surely I found myself able to open up and to do it through my connection with my faith once again. So at this point, let's fast forward to us starting our own family and having our first child, Milana. Within 24 hours of her birth, we found out she was born with a rare congenital heart defect that would require surgery at 3 weeks old. This was our first true trial, and to this day, we believe the power of prayer is what kept her with us. We had a large community of people praying, and it made all the difference. Many of you in this very room might remember, and it truly did lift us up. Now let's come back to the first quote, God never gives us more than we can handle. I have heard this as well as used it myself time and time again. At this point, I want to tell you about a series of events that happened about 2 years ago within a period of 5 months. It was the first week of November 2018. Our daughter Milana, who was 5 years old at the time, started having unexplained fevers and fatigue. Within a week, she was diagnosed with a bacterial infection to her synthetic mitral valve, which is called endocarditis. She was hospitalized, and this meant she would require her second open heart surgery, but not before she could be cleared from the infection to her heart. She had to take a break from kindergarten and stay at home so I could administer her 6 weeks of antibiotics through a port in her arm. Then she would travel to Boston for her open heart surgery. After 2 weeks in the hospital in Boston, we returned home, and within a couple of weeks, her brother Landon, 3 years old at the time, broke his leg in a trampoline accident. 2 days after his accident, their youngest brother Hudson, a year and a half, was hospitalized for 5 days with a respiratory infection. We were now in February, and Landon was casted still for a total of 8 weeks and could not put any pressure on his leg. He would then require a lot of physical therapy to get walking properly again. When the cast finally came off, it was a couple of days later when our youngest son went back into the ICU for another respiratory infection. This time it quickly turned into a life-threatening pneumonia and a collapsed lung. He spent a month in the ICU, which included 20 days on a ventilator and heavy narcotics to keep him sedated and comfortable. When we finally took him home, he was still in withdrawal, and we continued his weaning protocol from the narcotics at home. If you've ever seen a baby in drug withdrawal, let me tell you, it is both disturbing and heartbreaking. And I tell you this not so that you can pity us, but so that you can understand our trials and how we easily could have wavered from our faith. We could have questioned it all, asking why God, why us, but instead we clung to our faith more than ever. People would ask us, how did you do it? to which we would answer that we just did. We had to. But really, we weren't alone. We had God working through us and through the community that surrounded us. And yes, we continued to say, God never gives us more than we can handle. And we believed that. There obviously are times where we would think, really? Because this seems like a lot more than I can handle. And it wasn't until recently that I read a passage in a book that spoke to me and gave me a new perspective on it all. It was talking about exactly that God doesn't just give us what we can handle. He gives us more than we can handle. The author went on to explain that God often gives us way more than we're comfortable with so that we might cry out to him. These crises, these crossroads, are a call that we should seek God and perhaps feel our way toward him and find him. Yet he is actually not far from each one of us. Acts 17:27. This turning to God makes us ultimately realize we need something, someone outside of ourselves. We need him as our load bearer and our rescuer. Let's think about that. It's a different position than you may or may not have considered, but one that is so clear to me now. So now what about everything happens for a reason? We question this. We really have a hard time accepting this. Sometimes we just can't understand what that reason would be. And I don't think that we're meant to understand all the reasons. God moves through us, and God really does have a plan. I used to try to analyze my hardships and try to pull the reasons from them. And I definitely think I've determined some of them, but I'm at the point now that I just trust and believe, and I have the knowing that we have become stronger individually and as a family. Let me give you an example. Remember when I told you I battled an eating disorder and some major body image issues? Well, now I have to raise a daughter who has a special heart and is full of scars from 2 open heart surgeries and several minor surgeries. I have to teach her how to love her body. I cannot be a hypocrite in this. Children are sponges, and they're so intuitive. They can see right through us, and they can sense it all. God has showed me a path to use my experience in order to help others. So to me, and who knows, maybe I'm wrong, but to me, maybe God had me go through this self-doubt and my own body image journey so that now I have the tools and the experience to be able to guide my daughter, but also other young girls and women. About 10 years ago now, I worked with a charitable organization in Ottawa, Canada, when we lived there at the time, where I created positive body image programs and traveled within elementary schools and middle schools presenting to young girls and boys. It really felt like it had divine purpose, and it really came full circle to me. I'd like to share another perspective that I think goes along with what I've been talking about here. It stems from a dear friend of ours, Tim Kite, who started out as a leadership coach to my husband, but he quickly became like family to us. One of his main teachings is E plus R equals O. Event plus response equals outcome. Essentially, when something happens, how we choose to respond will ultimately determine how it plays out and what the result will be. As a Catholic, I used to reject that equation a little bit because I would say, we don't create our outcomes. We aren't in the driver's seat. But through reflection and through prayer, I've come to my own conclusion about it, and that it really can fit into God's plan. The way I see it now is that our response is rooted in God, and turning to him is what helps us in our response to then earn our outcome. And even just sharing this ideology and how I was able to adapt it to fit it within my own faith shows the continuous growth and reflection that comes along with our faithful journey. I want to thank you all for allowing me to share my journey through my faith, and I'd like to finish today by saying this. You might think that the opposite of faith is doubt, but in reality, the opposite of faith is actually sight. When you want to live by faith, you have to live with less control, less with knowing or understanding, and you live with a sense of love and with a sense of peace. And all in all, trust in God and where he will guide you. I'm going to leave you with a little picture slideshow of our journey to give you a little feel of our family unit. I hope you have a great day, and thanks again.
What a tender witness and an inspiration to us, and we're grateful to Janelle for that virtual message to